All right, heavens, and welcome into Flippin' Out Radio. I am here with Soul Joel Richardson, my good buddy, and the emerging force in the world of comedy. And I'm so excited that we're getting a chance to catch up and talk about a number of different things. But more than anything, this brand new documentary that you have out that discusses your story, you know what I mean, your survival as a business, as a comedy club, as a brand, and really in many ways, reemergence or, exponential growth as a result of something that happened, as opposed to what's happened to so many other venues of various size, shape, and purpose. So first things first, I'm James Flippin. He's Joel Richardson, aka Soul Joel, SJP Comedy. And you should go to his YouTube page. It's YouTube/Soul Joel TV. That's SOULJOEL TV. And it's a documentary that's really going to reach out to the hearts, I think, of comedy fans, but really just kind of anybody who has lived through what everybody's lived through over the last year can sympathize. I was talking with a buddy of mine before we started doing this, telling him the interview that I was going to do today with you.
Yeah.
And I said, well, this is a friend of mine who has a comedy club. And what happened was he opened it in November of 2019. And then wouldn't you know it, they got up to 5 days a week with all different kinds of, various schedules, this, that, the other thing by like February of 2020. And he was like, let me stop you. I know where this is going to go. And I was like, yeah. So it's really pretty fascinating when you break it down that your background as a promoter, as an entertainer, as somebody who does crowd work and understands that stuff played in so heavily to everything that you guys were able to do in pulling as much together as quickly as you did and as crazily as you did. So, without getting too far ahead of it, because I want to start way back when.
So it's so funny. I'll dive right into whichever part you want. It's so funny.
No,
I'm like,
dive in wherever. But I mean, my point being that there's so many layers to the onion with this story. It's not like you can just say, oh, somebody opened a comedy club in the middle of a pandemic and then also they made it through, because it's a lot more complicated than that. So, first of all, you and I know each other because we met on the set of the Artie Lang show back in, what was that, 2014? Or no, we would have actually met when it was still the Nick and Artie show.
I was going to say probably 2012, because we were up there for a good 2 years.
Okay, so see, I'm not even back far enough in my mind in terms of, I'm bad with dates. So that just needs to be thrown out there first and foremost.
It's great start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, dates are not exactly my strong point. But that being said, it would have been, like you said, 2012. I know the month was probably like October or something like that. I got hired on to this direct TV show that was, Nick and Artie, but also a radio show. And at the time, you were both managing and driving for Mike Bichetti.
Handling. So, I was the handler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, handler. So you were there a lot, pretty much every night for the most part.
Yep.
And so we got to know each other, you know what I mean? Like I could kind of, we had a similar sense of humor, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. We got to chatting, as you often do. Exactly. And I was always impressed by your hustle. You know what I mean? Like you were a guy who I could tell wasn't going to be denied with whatever it was you were a part of. You know what I mean? I'd love to find out. And again, everybody should go to your YouTube page and check out this. We have the description. We have the link, by the way, in the description of this episode. Go ahead and check out the documentary that's telling this story in great detail and from a lot of different voices with a lot of different interviews with very well-known comedians and people in comedy, by the way. Walk me back, if you will, to like where you think you developed some of that work ethic that you've basically put on during your time as a comedy promoter and as somebody who's now started your own club, built your own brand, become so successful in your own right. Where did that start? Like, I know I could be wrong, but I think you might have a wrestling
Yeah,
background.
well, definitely. I mean, yeah, definitely wrestling. I wrestled in college, wrestled in high school. That mentality, like the one-on-one, like you're not relying, even though you're part of a team, it's as much of an individual sport as well. All that, but both of my parents are both in sales. My mom, as a single mom raising three kids, I have two younger sisters. Being a 100% commission-based person, she sold real estate. And she didn't move. She kept us when my parents got divorced. Just kept us in the same house and just to keep our upbringing. And I saw her work so hard, and it was just a dream of mine to always make this happen. And back when you and I met, that's when I first started to want to open a comedy club. And I finally, after getting my MBA, I started to get into comedy, produce my own shows just to create stage time. And after 14 years in the business, I finally opened up my own comedy club, and I did produce shows in 21 different states. I started with like the Soul Joel comedy tour. I just set up different shows wherever I had family. And I went from 1 day a week, 2019, November 1st, to being open 5 days a week by the end of February 2020. And 2 weeks later, shut down like everybody else. And as my sister says in the documentary, she's like, you had two choices. I could lay down and just wait for things to open back up, or I could just not stop and try to make it happen. And our landlord, Rick Lewis, allowed us to have a playground outside, and it actually worked out better because we almost tripled the size of where we have this people social distance, and outside people felt safe. But there were so many people that told us that those comedy shows gave them hope, gave them laughter, brought them through the pandemic, and that bright spot. And we got noise complaints, and I can't tell you how many people wanted to fist fight me because of the noise, and like guys on motorcycles driving by trying to intimidate me. I'm like, and I was dressed in all pink. I'm like, because I was like Tiger Woods. Pink became my Sunday color. Like I was coming down the thing, I was like, it was my mentality. I was like, yeah, I'm the owner, but just because I'm dressed in pink doesn't mean I won't tip you off that motorcycle like a cow.
Now, so you're obviously talking about the club in
Yeah.
Royersford, Pennsylvania, that is now your business, is now your reality. For so long, you'd been kind of like a traveling brand of shows, and you'd wanted, like you said in the documentary, which everybody should go to YouTube and check out Soul Joel TV and watch the documentary. The description has the episode link as well.
Yeah.
You wanted that club, and that's something that you probably came to appreciate as you were going through all these different venues. You talk about booking shows that were in restaurants and at small birthday parties or whatever,
country clubs.
Crazy stuff that you're doing to make a living and piece together.
We did the Mike Boschetti roast in the back of a bowling alley.
I was
there. A comedy club, but like even that, it's like
I was there.
Yeah, my
So what? I mean, what did you ever face the same level of like that type of thing, like people who wanted to fight you or anything like that, or like, noise complaints? I mean, there's got to be something so unique beyond just thinking about the obvious with doing comedy shows outside. I mean, I was even thinking about, and this is where I'm like a nerd to this level, but I know you'll appreciate this. The acoustics are tough.
Yeah.
And I think it was Matteries maybe who was talking about how it's weird because like the joke might not reverberate the way you expected it to. Even if people are laughing, you might not hear the laugh that well. Or like, and again, the acoustics are such a big thing for any kind of show. Yep. So yeah, just with everything like that. I mean, like, have you ever faced that level of problematic thing where somebody's going to get in your face or be a part of your space because you're outside?
Though that in my face happened over the summer. That was outside because of noise complaints.
Yeah.
Actually, it was my like third show. I ended up having to get a lawsuit. This is back probably like 12 years ago. I was still in pharmaceutical sales, maybe 13 years ago. I was working
when you officially made that plunge, by the way, because I don't think I knew that part of the story.
May 6th. It was on May 6th. It was 3 days after my birthday. My birthday's May 3rd. It'll be 12 years. So it was 2009. May 6th, 2009. I set up a show overlooking in Staten Island, overlooking the skyline of New York. It was open bar. That's how I tried to get people in. My
Yeah.
sister mentioned that was the first one, but then I did another one.
That's where she got hammered.
That's where she got hammered, fell down the stairs. My aunt actually drove my grandmother, and it was open bar, so she would take 2 Coors Lights, pound one at the bar, and walk back to the night because she didn't want her mom, my grandmom, to know that she was double fisting.
Great stuff.
But that owner ended up, him and I got in an argument that night, and he ended up punching me and knocking me out. Dude, I was like unconscious because we got in a argument over how many people he thought were going to be there. It was just and I ended up, I sued and won because he like leveled me out and I was concussed. And like I had to like take work off because I had a huge like, black eye and I was in sales. It was, I didn't even talk about that in the documentary, but like stuff over the years, it was like there were so many things that like a normal person probably would have quit years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Which you, of course, are not, and that's why we love you.
not at all. Well, and my dad, we talked about this a little bit as well. Like he lives in China, and so he like had been buying and selling electronics his whole life, and realized he was going to go over there to develop relationships and with the factories and stuff. And Chinese New Year was the end of January last year, 2020, and since then, he had been shut down at the end of February, and it was the first weekend that we were open 6 days a week. And I remember just being exhausted, and him telling me, he goes, "You're going to be shut down." He goes, "It's going to shut down America." And I was like, "No way, man!" I was like, "I've been waiting 14 years for this. Like, however many times I've tried to open up, I finally have big boy bills where I got a staff and rent. I'm like, things are going so well that I can't. We were booking out 6 months in advance. I can't even imagine." And he was like, "Well, start saving your money because it's going to happen." And 2 weeks later, he was right. Like one of my buddies, Julian McCullough, went to high school together. He flew in from LA for the whole weekend. We had him Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we had a fundraiser in my hometown in South Jersey. And he gets off the plane. He's like, "What's up, buddy?" And I'm like, "I think you're getting right back on that plane." And because we were in Montgomery County, we got shut down March 13th. The other side of the river, literally 100 yards across the river, got shut down the 20th. But we got shut down a week earlier than everybody else, and he had to get back on the plane, and we did one out of the 3 shows. But it was just in 5 hours of that plane ride of him flying from LA to Philadelphia. Like that's how quickly everything changed last year.
Yeah. No. Listen, I remember it well because I was actually going out to San Francisco on like March 13th or something like that, March 13th, 14th. And my boyfriend at the time, he was like, "Well, should we go? What should we do?" And I was like, "I think it's fine." You know what I mean? Like it's whatever.
Yeah.
It was sort of like the ghost that you could see, but nobody really was talking about when we were there.
Right.
So I remember that time very well. But yeah, there's so many parts of your story here that, and obviously it's going to come off as though I'm like selling the story or whatever, but it's just so many different pieces that are like, you wouldn't believe them per se, unless you'd actually lived it. The fact that your dad was like the canary in the coal mine saying like, you know what I mean? Like there's shit coming from China, you know what I mean? And you were like, yeah, whatever. And it's right as soon as you guys had like kind of hit full bore and got all your cylinders firing on the comedy club. So again, for anybody who doesn't, know the full story, basically what happened was you guys had to shut down, obviously. Yep. And you couldn't have indoor events. Nobody could. And you decided to literally just continue the show right on the same property, adjacent property, a big field that was there.
Yep.
And you're like, "Look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get this flatbed truck, footing so that it can be the stage.
Yeah.
And we'll have people sitting there in lawn chairs and we'll tell jokes and stuff."
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing when you watch a documentary, and I didn't really talk about this part though. We kept evolving, and things I didn't realize happen while you're going through it. Like you don't take the time to like put all the pieces together, like you said, and what other people were thinking until hindsight is 2020. But we had a 40-foot tractor trailer bed. That's our stage, and we put it on a hill. And not in the amphitheater part of it. And when Mike Vecchione showed up that first night, July 3rd, we had been working out in the outside and sweating. And when Mike Vecchione showed up, he goes, "No, that stage is way too far from the audience. We need to be down there." So I had to take a portable 4x4 foot stage right before the show started and put it in so instead of standing on a 40-foot stage, he's sitting on this 4x4 foot stage, and it ended up raining and thundering and lightning, and he's holding a microphone going, "How long?" And so him and I are both wrestlers. That's how him and I connect. And he's like, "How long are we going to go?" And he just looked at me like, "You better go until this show's over. You're not getting paid." He kind of looked at me like, "All right, let's go." And I didn't realize that Joe List saw that video and saw what a nightmare it looked like, almost didn't agree to start the festival off. Like 3 weeks later, not realizing that every week we improved it. It was before the sand, before we improved the stage, made it a black box theater now, black box stage. And my sister booked all the comics. Well, I booked the comics, but she put them in order. And Joe List kicked off the festival, and he released his Comedy Central special the next week. So he did a whole media tour, Jim and Sam and Preston and Steve in Philly. And all these people were reaching out to me going, "Yo, Joe List is talking about this show and this show." Because when you promote a special, no one wants to just talk about your special. They want to be like, "Hey, so what else have you been up to?" And our show was the only show he had been doing. But he was this close of saying, "No, that looks like a nightmare. I don't want to do outside comedy, let alone whatever Soul Joel and the boys are doing down in Royersford."
Yeah.
And then he ended up doing it, and it ended up being the best thing that happened to us, because now since then he comes every other month. He's brought Louis C.K. 3 times to our place.
And that's how the documentary kind of like really starts to hit its happy ending story moment. Right. When the thing really gets going, like, it's like any good story. It goes in parts, right? So, and check it out at Soul Joel TV on YouTube. The whole thing. It's like beginning. Oh, Joel's history. You know what I mean? Going back and which is in its own right the kind of thing I'd like to even talk more about with, like, the Poconos Pizza Lodge and stuff like. I just, as a podcaster, I appreciate that kind of stuff, because it's like, there's plenty of times people aren't listening or whatever it may be. You're doing it because you're trying to build towards something bigger. You're in the gym, you're practicing, whatever it may be. You're trying to get that next level. And the only way to do it is to hustle from the ground up and build it. And so for you, everything that came with this ascension in the middle of the pandemic, it makes a lot of sense the way the story flows. It's like, okay, Joel was that guy. You always knew he was hustling. He had a show. He was promoting this. He was promoting that. You're like, I don't know what this is going to be like, but let's go. And then you sort of became, in many ways, kind of the only show in town, right? Like once summer really set in, there was no Philadelphia comedy scene. There was no New York comedy scene.
Shut down. Yeah. And here's the funny thing that you just talked about. That venue was the first venue that I did like a road gig in the Poconos, but and I would drive 2 hours away. I was still in my pharmaceutical sales, so they were paying all the car, gas, and insurance, all that stuff. But here's the funny thing: all the people that I had from this summer, like, had started with me. So I had Nate Bargatze at that place. Nate was like huge, just released his second Netflix special. He's enormous. Well, this was prior to him being sober. We had drunk Nate. And I had 3 guys in the car. It was Nate, my buddy John Zaluga, who I started comedy with. He's now a writer and producer for the Impractical Jokers on True TV. And the third guy was Pat O'Shea. And because the venue was half pizzeria, half bar, we did a comedy show. So there was a bunch of people in the establishment that just weren't there for comedy. They were there 5 hours before the show started, just getting hammered because it was Friday in the Poconos and there's nothing else to do. So he did this quote from a movie, "Shut up, Leon, just shut up." And this guy in the back goes, "That's a good idea. You should shut them." There's no coming back from that. You tell a comic to shut up, they literally have nothing else. So Nate gets drunk, asks to borrow my cell phone. I don't know who he's texting. I'm driving. We get back into New Jersey. You've been in radio your whole life. We finally get the FM frequency from New York. He comes in and is 92.3 K Rock back in the day, because this is like 2008, 2007, like somewhere in there. And he goes, "Hey guys," and Pat and John were in the back seat, and he goes, "We didn't really talk much. You guys like rock?" And it was like, "Yeah." So he puts on K Rock, and the DJ comes in. It was like, "Hey, this is Dan Soder. That was just Metallica. By the way, we just got word that Soul Joel's just rocked out in the Poconos or headed back to New York. By the way, shut up, Pat. Just shut up, dude. You see this guy in the back seat? Just freak the fuck out." Because he's like, "Are you kidding me? Did I just bomb that hard that they're already talking about this bombing back in New York?" And meanwhile, Nate had texted Soder, who was that's why he moved from Arizona to New York to be a DJ on K Rock, and he was working the overnight shift. It was like midnight, but you're still in New York City, so there could have been 2007. There could have still been hundreds of thousands of people listening to that. And he goes, "Oh, I thought at first it was some sort of commercial that Soul Joel bought. Then I was like, oh my God, they just did my joke." And Nate just is just hysterically laugh. Like that was just Nate's attitude. But like all those guys started with me, and now I got those guys to come back and like did this whole like the summer, because I got them to make a living, remind them why they did comedy, and it was just fun. But those are guys I started with and had all these stories about. So it was funny you brought that venue up.
Well, and how in addition to the fact that obviously you guys are, surviving, not that thriving, and kind of like building this brand now. You've got the new dome that you guys are doing shows underneath and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you must be doing pretty well. I mean, it must have been a pretty good summer as well financially, right? I mean, there must have actually been a pretty good amount of tickets that you guys sold.
Yeah. So the funny thing is that like we went from, and I just posted about this on Facebook, that a year ago now in April, I literally went to bed with $300 in my account. And I'm like, I don't know. The next day I had to pay my full-time. I have one full-time employee. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I woke up with one of the grants came through for like $3,000. And it was deposited regularly in my account so I could make my payment to my employee. But that was like a sign from the universe. I'm like, oh, things are on the right path. Things are going to work out. And then we started with the outdoor shows. And I was like a used car salesman, all the videos you saw, trying to make it happen. And we started thriving, and we were really kicking in. Like I replenished my savings account, my checking account, and then it started getting cold again. And we bought the dome for $53,000, and I raised $14,000 with the stage sponsors through the companies, and we didn't solicit one of those companies. They all came to us to support, and we raised through individual. We did like a one-time donation in December. And we raised $13,000 through individuals. So we raised $27,000 in the matter of like 2 weeks. But we didn't make money in November, December, and January. Those 3 months, we like every show generated revenue, but we didn't actually turn a profit for 90 days. And because propane heaters and the space heat, all the propane, everything, the cost of doing business went up. And the audiences went down. The numbers spiked. CDC said, don't go out, stay home. It was just, I mean, so many things were stacked up against us. But then all of a sudden, go ahead. Andrew Dice Clay called me himself. It was January 9th, and I'm sitting there on a Friday night, and I think it's someone just prank calling me, and it said Beverly Hills. I'm like, yeah, okay. I get so many phone calls where it's like, have you updated your Google listing?
Yeah, or your car's warranty or whatever the fuck. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you updated? Yeah, exactly. And I answer the phone and he goes, "Hey, yo, Joel, it's Dice. Did you know I was going to call, or is this a surprise?" I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So I want to be like, Dice, I'm in the middle of a show right now. It's not a good time for me. Can I call you back? But we're talking just right back and forth, and before you know it, 3 hours later, we put tickets on sale, and he's posted on Facebook and Instagram that was the best shows of his whole winter. And I'm like, for a guy like that to have headlined and sold out Madison Square Garden and every arena twice, and it just meant a lot to me. And just for your listeners, I want to tell this story. I didn't tell the story in the documentary. he like wanted to know what it looked like, and he wants to get paid in green. He said slices of meat in the lunchbox. I didn't know. I didn't know what that meant, right? I didn't know. I didn't know what that meant. So I texted the pictures. I go, no problem. I'll pay you in cash. He calls me up. He goes, "What are you doing, man? We're on a recorded line." And I was like, "Recorded line? Like it just sounds so like hard." So when my grandfather was still alive, I did shows in his hometown in Western Pennsylvania, and I was on the front page. All four of my grandparents went to the same high school, and I was on the front page of the paper. So he was hard of hearing. I'm in the Starbucks. I'm still doing pharmaceutical sales, but I'm trying to gain some traction with comedy. And so he's so hard of hearing that I'm talking out loud, like, in the Starbucks, And this guy, Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, very Italian neighborhood. And this guy in an Argyle sweater was like, "Hey, man, I didn't mean to eavesdrop into your conversation, but are you in comedy?" I'm like, "Hey," he goes, "I'm downtown Ronnie. I was Andrew Dice Clay's first manager. We sold out every arena in the country twice." So on the conversation with Dice, the first time I tell him, I'm like, "Hey, I met you up at the Artie Lang show." He's like, "I don't remember that." So I'm like, "All right." And then I was like, "And I met your first manager, Ronnie." He goes, "That was downtown Ronnie. He's a gangster." He's like, "Took care of a couple of things for me, but no professional affiliation." And I was like, "You can say that, but you can't say, I can't say I'm paying you cash."
Look, he's probably rightly more concerned about the IRS than the FBI. And that's probably accurate, as a matter of fact. He probably should be more worried about the
Dude, but he was so great. And I had so many different conversations with him and Eleanor Kerrigan, who opens for him in travel. We had her headline the club twice, and I asked her a few questions because he called me up and was like, it was literally snowing, and I didn't really outdoor, like the front and the back of the dome are open, the sides are closed, and it's like 30, 40 feet in the air. It's huge. So I didn't know if literally snowing if Dice was going to do the last show, and so he's still on LA time, West Coast time. So he calls me up around 3 o'clock. The show's at 7, and I go, "Dice, we ready to go tonight?" He goes, "Ask me again." I go, "Dice, you ready to rock tonight?" He goes, "You don't see me backing down, do you?" I'm like, "Dude, so great, right?" And he goes, "Hey, my girl last night had salmon in King of Prussia. Do you know what restaurant?" And I was like, "Founding Farmers." And you hear Eleanor going, "You think there's only one place to grab salmon in King of Prussia? There's the country's second biggest mall. Like there's tons of restaurants. Like that's the one place." So I went to Eleanor and I'm like, "Is he like? Is he?" She goes, "He's taping this for his documentary. Like he just after 40 years in the business, I don't think he gets to like meet someone like me that he's never dealt with before. So I'm like new territory for him."
Right.
Because he goes, "What movie was that from? The whole backing down?" And he goes, "It's coming to you, right?" I'm like, "Nah, I don't know." He goes,
Oh, no.
Wesley Snipes, Undisputed, the boxing movie. And I'm like, it's like, it's not ringing a bell. But dude, it's been great. Like he literally, like we got him coming back in the summer.
That's awesome.
And he's been great. But like while you're going through it, he's like trying to test you every step of the way. Like almost like I gotta like I'm a fraternity brother and I'm trying to earn my stripes. Like
right.
You want to be in this?
Yeah. Well, look, it's a great documentary. Again, you should watch it. It's on YouTube TV. It's YouTube/Soul Joel TV. And if you check the description of this episode here, you can watch it. How did you get into this life of comedy, right? Like, did you have a friend who you guys like to go to the clubs when you were younger? Did you grow up watching Comedy Central? Did you just like always watch stand up on TV, or was it like records you listened to or something? Like how were you really into Stern or something? Like how did you get into comedians?
So two things. One, I actually someone just asked me this and I didn't realize this until recently, but I wanted to go to all 50 states and I've been to 39 so far. When I was in college, my roommate at the time we went to high school together. We drove to Pittsburgh to visit my dad, and then his dad was living in Nashville, and his brother was going to University of Tennessee in Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up in 1999. I saw George Carlin at the Grand Ole Opry. That
Wow.
was my first live comedy show, and
Holy shit.
until recently, when I didn't realize it's the first time I've been actually asked on a show. But someone asked me that other day, and I was like, "Oh, I guess that was my first comedy show," without realizing like that because that was like a theater, like huge historical theater. I didn't realize.
Right.
But then going to school in New York, I had that in my mind. We were like, I was on a double date with one of my fraternity brothers, and we're in the Village, and we just stumbled upon the Comedy Cellar, not realizing what the Comedy Cellar is now, and all the guys that I use now are like that's their like gym where they work out all their jokes in New York. So I saw my first show. I saw Lisa Lampanelli and Wanda Sykes, Kevin Brennan, Mike, all these guys. Keith Robinson was hosting, and Louis C.K. And halfway through the show, they were like, "Oh, you've been a great crowd. Please welcome a special guest, Chris Rock." And Chris walks in, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is what New York's all about." So I just kind of fell in love with comedy. And then a guy a year older than me, I told you about, was making a living out of it. And I just, from there on in, I was like, I just wanted to try comedy. So when I went back to school to get my MBA, that's when 2006, May 2006, I started comedy I tried it for the first time, and I just I never stopped.
Wow.
But those two things in 1999, seeing Chris Rock and Carlin at the height, like that was probably what got me buzzing over comedy.
Even those other the people that were on before him, I mean, that's like ridiculous. I was just referencing a Wanda Sykes stand-up joke the other day because my fiance he doesn't really watch anymore, but The Bachelor.
Okay.
I was like, or as Wanda Sykes calls it, bitches love money.
Oh, that's funny, dude. She's great, man. She's fantastic.
No, I loved her on Curb Her Enthusiasm too. You got some great jokes on there that always made me laugh. So I mean, look, it's a great documentary. Soul Joel TV on YouTube, and it's Soul Joel Richardson. He's got the whole Soul Joel brand that's continuing now. And basically, I guess at this point, I mean, how far booked out are you like for the summer now? I mean, like we're
starting to book shows in July, and we're rebooking for the festival. We have a couple of dates in August already booked. We got Dice coming back, and all this. Yeah, it's been great, man. We got Bill Bellamy coming next week. DL Hughley and Jim Brewer. These big acts, and it's been great. It's finally given our sense a chance of like normalcy to be able to plan ahead like any other business.
And still, though, there's all the digital stuff and all the content that you guys do, like including this documentary, right? Like, how does that work? Like, what's your experience been with stuff like Patreon and Venmo and trying to get people to contribute to some of the stuff you do outside of the comedy club as well? Because I mean, you're a content creator, right? Like it continues all the time, just like your hustle does.
Yeah. Well, we started Patreon last year, and when we didn't know how often we were gonna be able to do shows outside, we're just doing these virtual shows and Zoom, which makes it tough because you don't have that interaction face to face with the crowd.
At a bad room, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, you and I can make each other laugh. I'm not making you laugh. Something's going wrong. But I don't know if the people that are watching this, if they're just like what they're doing, and it makes it very, very tough.
Right.
But we were making a lot of content, making videos, and then it just came to a screeching halt because we went outside and we had to put so much effort into the outdoor space. So we're finally getting back to. We have an Easter video that we're releasing tomorrow with one of our guys dressing up as the Easter Bunny.
Nice.
But yeah, we made a bunch of different videos last year too to try to help promote this.
It's probably not so easy for you to do your crowd work in like a Venmo. Oh, what a dumb avatar. What a stupid screen name you got there. Nice avatar. What are you supposed to say? Like,
and there's always someone, wearing pajamas or eating ice cream right up to the screen, blending something. You're like, does that sound like ice and nickels being blended? Like, why? Yeah. What are you doing that you're like, you're not self-aware that you have a blend. You think a blender right now, just put yourself on mute. Just put yourself on mute.
So how do people find all that stuff in terms of like your Patreon, your social media, your whatever?
It's on souljoels.com, SOULJOELS.com. All the links to social media. I'm at sjpcomedy.com. But Soul Joel TV. And and all the Venmo tips go to @SoulJoel. Brendan Donegan directed this and produced this, and all the money that we get donated goes right to him.
Yes, there's a few like recurrent faces in the documentary. Like your sister is a great addition.
Yeah,
she's got the.
We call her the Queen of the North. The Queen of the North.
I love it. The Queen of the North. Yes, exactly. And she's certainly fitting of a Stark title. I would say. But
just dealing with us maniacs, but then also being a female in an all boys club, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's people love, like, she's almost like the breakout star, we call her, from this, because people, they get her perspective from all this. But she's kind of just threw herself right in this. She was the ideas person. Like she said in the documentary, like 11:30 at night, she was just tossing and turning in bed and thought about putting sand, because that's what she wants to think about, is 11:30 at night. My problems, not hers.
Exactly.
She's raising 4 kids. She's got a full-time job, but Soul Joel Productions is what she's thinking about in bed at 11:30 at night.
Well, that's what happens with sisters.
Yeah.
Sister, mom, they're always worrying, right? But a lot of the time,
she's got 5 kids.
Exactly.
They call me Full House. I don't know how I become Uncle Joey, but I'm living in her basement.
Well, so she brought that up.
Of course she did. She's my biggest fan and my biggest critic.
Is Uncle Jesse Matteries?
Matter.
That's right. Yeah. Not Matteries. I said that.
No. But Matteries has been headlining our club a few times, so he's been involved too.
Yeah. So anyway, it's great to see how everybody's got their little terms. Everybody's kind of got their little family that comes to form that Soul Joel production. Which for you is just a labor of love that kind of like has evolved from plenty of bad rooms.
Oh my gosh.
Working your way through all that, wanting a physical space, getting it, sort of having it taken away from you, but bouncing back in such a big and productive way. It's crazy.
Well, and that's what that's what makes it. The night before the whole Big J incident, we did that 17-day festival. And we had, because August is like hurricane season, when we get like the bad rain in the Northeast. Well, it created on the lot where we're at just this lake of water, and I don't know what we're gonna do. So she's got a car bigger than mine. She ends up going to get this sand from Home Depot, and she shows up with a half a ton of sand. I'm like, well, where's the other half? She goes, oh, it's on the way. Some guy's bringing it in his truck. And I'm like, what? Like. We spent like $1,000 or whatever it was on the sand, but $500 of it is in like some stranger's car. I'm like, well, he's got the address. I didn't give him his number. I'm not a total idiot. I'm like, what? But it made for such a great story, and she's like elbow deep putting all the sand out there. And Giannis Pappas, who was in the car with Mattern when I decided to leave pharmaceutical sales 12 years ago, he pulls up. This is like, you can't write a better script, in his Tesla, and he rolls down the window, and comics can't be anything but ball busting, and goes, you still trying to do comedy in the apocalypse, bud? I'm like, dude, I'm elbow deep in sand. My sister's just pouring. Like, she just looks at me like, I want to rip your head off if you don't get down here now. And I'm like, Giannis, I want to punch you right through your Tesla window right now.
Nice. Yeah, no, that was great. That was a great moment in the documentary, and just kind of like, I don't know. It's fascinating to me the way you're kind of like a that there's that term like a comics comic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're one of those guys within the community. You know what I mean? And you can hear it in the way that people talk about you. Like, even I think there's the clip in the documentary from the Legion of Skanks where Gomez is kind of saying something along those lines. You know what I mean? Like, it's just interesting to me. I really appreciate that. The fact that you've kind of carved that niche in that world from what was just sort of a love and like being caught up in all the energy and excitement with it, and then saying, you know what, I think I could make something out of myself here.
Yeah, well, and that's what so many comics along the way, like one of my mentors, Angelo Lozada, he didn't get his break until he was like in his 50s when he was hosting and warming up the crowd for the Daily Show with Trevor Noah, and then he ended up traveling the whole world with Trevor in his jet. And he's like, just be a good person and hang in there. He was in the business for like 30 years before that happened. So for me to be in this business for 14 years, I knew if I just kept building the right relationships, wasn't a scumbag, which is so many people in this business are, and just always treat people the right way, it's all going to come back. And I didn't realize 2020 and 2021 were going to be the time that it all came back, but that karma all came back.
But what was that like? Like, it's kind of, I guess, in a way, it's kind of messed up that it comes as a result of a guy getting, yanked off stage, which is obviously something you don't typically want happening at your comedy club. But what was that like when you started to sort of pick up on how that was like a big news story that was getting a lot of coverage, and you were like, wow, like I'm in the middle of this now. You know what I mean? Like,
well, it's because so it was like lightning.
By the way, was there ever like, did you have to worry about any sort of like extended circumstances? Like there was a fight as a result of that, obviously. So you could tell that.
Well, I'll let you know the court dates in 2 weeks. The court dates in 2 more weeks.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So, well, that'll be another episode. No, I mean, I like we couldn't have planned a better like if I was trying to do like a publicity stunt.
Yeah,
we couldn't have planned it. But Big J wasn't even supposed to be on that show, and he was a last minute replacement because it was 2 out of the 3 guys from the Legion of Skanks. Dave Smith ended up having a death in the family, so Big J gets added, which I'm fine with. And then the next day after they get yanked off, everyone's talking about it. We end up booking Jim Brewer, and then 2 days later, Dave Attell was there for 2 shows sold out. So it was like boom, boom, boom. But then it was off to the races. But it was after people have been hearing my name for years, whether it was on, but more people talked about us in 14 hours than in 14 years being in this business. It was wild. I've never seen anything like it, but I was like, well, whatever it took. But they made that example, like Mark Norman said, Bill Burr with that big incident down in Camden and that whole thing, like that kind of broke him. So I guess that was my Camden story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Exactly. So look, now you guys are, like you said, you're off and running. You've made the big investment into the Dome, which is a fixed structure with, like, I imagine probably not just better temperature control, but it's got to be like better acoustics too, right?
Better acoustics, yeah. It's trapping the laughter on the sound. It's much better, so it feels like you're inside, but also feels like you're outside. I mean, it's safe and it's social distance and everything. But yeah, people are loving it. Comics are loving it, and it's the best thing we could have done. It was a hard decision to make, but I'm glad we made it.
So that's, again, all plays itself out in the documentary. You can go to youtube.com/SoulJoelTV and check that out also here in the link. But what's the future like for the Soul Joel brand, like 10 years down the road? Like, do you think that you're the kind of guy that would maybe have like other clubs somewhere, kind of grow it in that way? Or is this just the kind of thing where like you want it to be the sickest place that it could be in Royersford, Pennsylvania, and that's kind of like the Philadelphia comedy scene, that type of thing? Like, or what's your thinking on that side?
Yeah, well, I think right now we're looking for to have a big place inside, because and my sister reminded me of this too. Like I said before this whole pandemic started, all I needed was a place that we could hold, like 300 to 400 people, and if I had that, I could book anyone in the country, and we proved that was right. Even though I forgot that I said that. So now the long term, we need a place that fits that many people inside and that many people outside, because the Dome is now forever going to be a part of our at least summertime, late spring, early fall kind of business model, because people love putting their toes in the sand and they've been cooped up all winter long. They love being outside, but want to see a show. So we've added music before the show and after the show.
I'm glad you brought that up, man. I think that is so awesome. Like, I really love the vibe, and I can't wait to get down there and check it out. But the vibe in that place is so awesome. Like with the band playing and just kind of like the energy that you can feel is coming. And again, a lot of that, to your point, I think can only be imagined with the ability to actually go to something like that in the middle of a pandemic when there is no other option. So you're going to get some of that, release of tension, whatever it may be that comes with that. But it's such a cool vibe. I love the fact that you guys have that music, that band.
And the artists, as far as the musicians, they're given a platform and a place to perform in front of audience members. And the audience who hasn't been able to see live music, they get a 2-for-1. So it's such a give and take, and with both the audience and the performers on both sides of the stage, everyone's been benefit from it and has been just loving it. So you're right, the vibe's been great.
So what's the best way? Let's say there's somebody who stayed with the entire video and is really digging on this, and they're going to check out the documentary and all that. But what's the best way somebody can find you? You find the club, get tickets if they want to make the drive, or if they live close by, or Patreon, or whatever it may be. Like, what's the best way to do all that?
So souljoels.com, SOULJOELS.com, and all my contact info is on there. The number on there goes right to my cell phone. So they can contact.
Also has any beef with you, like one of those motorcycle guys who wants to basically beat the shit out of you, they can contact you on the website there.
Here I am. Come get it. Yeah, that's how. But that's how you can reach me and find out everything. And we actually get discounts on the hotel rooms too. And so if you mention either at the Hilton Garden Inn in Oaks, or also there's the Staybridge Suites in Royersford. If you mention Soul Joel's, you get a discounted hotel room. So in case you're coming from outside the area and want to catch a show, and that's the thing, man, we didn't get paid for any of this, but we've helped stimulate so many different aspects. We partnered with restaurants and partnered with the hotels, and we've helped everyone bring in all these people to the area. A place of Royersford, the population is under 5,000.
Yeah.
And we've literally had more people than that come to all of our shows since July 3rd.
So one of the things that I think was sort of like brought up early in the documentary and then doesn't really get kind of like flushed out as much, but maybe is sort of an understated or unstated aspect of everything. But I wanted to ask you about it. You talked about back in the day when you were that traveling brand of comedy shows, how it was very lonely, right? Like you were kind of living the life of a comic, kind of going
traveling joy salesman. Yeah.
Traveling joy salesman, a great term that you use in the show, in the documentary. Is it fair to say that this now, the life that you're living now, and having the place and having the team that you're working with and all that, that it's not like that anymore, that loneliness is kind of gone?
Yeah. And I actually went through a breakup last year, and but yeah, it's not. Well, yeah, during the pandemic, I was quarantined with someone, and I actually made this like my mission to make the comedy Soul Joel's and the comedy festival last year. I said, I'm going to throw all my energy into this, and I want the whole country to be talking about this without knowing everything that was going to happen. And it happened. But yeah, in general, it hasn't been as lonely. I'm surrounded by my family, my nieces, my nephew, and everyone else on our team has been helping with, so I don't have to be that lonely person. But yeah, it's been great, man. It's not having to travel as much is great, but
you know, though, do you miss the travel also in a way? Do you miss going to?
Yeah. I don't miss like
those experiences. Must have just been so cracked out. Like I see the twinkle in your eye when you're remembering some of those road trips and stuff.
Oh yeah. It's crazy when you're going through it. You get tired and you're like, oh man, I got to drive and by yourself. But I end up catching up on phone calls and different stuff on the way there. But yeah. So as much as you miss it, you don't miss it.
You have an office now. You probably have a nice office now, right? You got a nice desk. You got a phone and everything. You're like,
but we got no office, buddy. Our office is the sand pit. Yeah, it's perfect. Crazy.
That's
yeah. My office is my sister's basement. It's
and your
nice.
Cell phone. And your cell phone.
And my cell phone. Yeah. It's virtual. You can take it anywhere.
Exactly. You were virtual before all this. You were the original remote.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's great. Well, look, man, I'm really, really proud of you. I always knew that, you were going to be that guy owning a club somehow. Of course, nobody knew that anybody's story was going to go through what it did the last 12 months. But, cream rises to the top. You know what I mean? Like you guys obviously had you had something that's sort of like understated, I think, in life. And people act like it's a business thing, but it's really more than that, is networking and like how you get to know people and leave a good impression on them. And then whenever it may be that they're talking to you about or calling on you for, it's like, well, I'm kind of interested because I know this guy and whatever.
Yeah.
That's so powerful in terms of accomplishing whatever it is you want to do. And I feel like you're sort of a very natural networker. It's not like a forced thing. You know what I mean? It's like you just kind of ingratiate yourself to people and stuff.
But that's why I think you and I are kindred spirits, man. Because the minute I reach out, you like text back. It might take you a couple hours, but you always text back. And it's like we pick up right where we left off, man. And I respect that about you too, man. You're the same way.
Well, look, there's definitely something to be said for, like I said, podcasting. And when I think about, doing a stand-up gig at a steakhouse when people are trying to, focus on their cream of spinach or whatever, it's like, I get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's not all puppies and sunshine.
That's for sure. So look, go to Soul Joel. It's souljoels.com.
Yep.
That's the full kit and caboodle. But the club is in Royersford, Pennsylvania. Am I saying that right?
Royersford. Yeah. I said it wrong for years. Is Ford, like the president or the last name of the car.
Or the car. So Royersford, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And what is it, like a half hour from Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, something like that?
Yeah. It's like a half hour outside of Philadelphia. It's 2 hours door to door from Midtown Manhattan.
Nice.
Yeah, going right from Midtown right to there. So yeah, souljoels.com and then go to Soul Joel's TV to check out the documentary, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. I'm so pumped that we could do it, and the documentary was really very enjoyable. It made me think. It took me back to like watching that documentary when Seinfeld was working out his material and kind of that behind the scenes thing, because having worked on the Artie Lang show, I kind of always enjoyed comedians talking shop. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just such a fascinating craft, and people that are funny are typically funny in a variety of different settings. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. They don't turn it off.
Watch them telling jokes. You know what I mean?
Even when you were watching Nick DiPaolo kind of like not be a part of that TV show, when he was like, he goes, all the suits want me to smile. Well, that's not my personality. I'm miserable. And you're like, he's trying to vent, but he can't vent, be mad, but also not be funny at the same time.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Great stuff. All right, man. Well, look, great talking to you. Great catching up. Everybody check out the documentary at YouTube/Soul Joel TV and Soul Survivor. That's the name of it. So go ahead and check it out.
Thanks, buddy.
Later, man.